You're listening to the Australian Hunting and Beyond podcast with Matt, where we talk about hunting, shooting, fishing, camping, and everything else that the great outdoors has to offer. Let's get into it. All right. If you are a member of Fellow Deer Hunters of Australia, you've heard me talk about it for a while because I admin the page, and it's going pretty strong, nearly 30,000 people, which is fantastic. And we were lucky enough for the rut this year that we had Murphy's Trophy Taxidermy down there in Goulburn, who donated a shoulder mount, not someone else's buck, but you had to shoot the buck yourself from this year's rut, and he would give the winner who had the best story, we'd pick it out, and they would get the opportunity to have that buck mounted. And part of it, I thought, well, you know, he's been so generous for the group that it would make sense that I do something as well, and went, well, you know what, how about not only does the person with the best story win, but they also get to jump on the podcast and have a chat and tell us the story on the podcast. So they can relive it, anyone else can relive it, and we get to hear a cool story as well. So tonight, excited, we have the winner of the first ever taxidermy mount giveaway on the Australian or Fallow Deer Hunters of Australia Facebook group. So Nick, welcome to the podcast, and mate, congratulations on winning.
Oh mate, thank you so much to yourself, the page, and Brad from Murphy's Trophy Taxidermy. I'm pretty stoked and excited to tell my story.
Well, mate, I'm excited to hear it because obviously we had a bit of a snippet of it, but it's always better to hear it than, you know, I do like reading and I do like to see the stories, but I feel there's always details that don't come across, and then there's not people sort of asking questions about it, and that's what I like to do because I definitely like to hear. So, mate, just quickly, they are down in Goulburn. So if you're in Sydney looking for someone to do taxidermy, please look them up. Brad is a top bloke and love his support. I think he even mentioned that we might be doing this annually. So, you know, I'd love that if that was happening. So, and mate, you can claim that you were the first ever. That's always a win too. So, all right. Let's hear it. Let's get into it. I know people are keen.
All right, beautiful, mate. So as you've obviously seen in the photo, I took my young fella out for a hunt for the rut. So we've been out, I think I've taken him the last two, maybe even 3 ruts with me for a bit of a hunt. And this is the first sort of representative buck that we've managed to get. He's called in a couple previously, but they've only been, you know, reasonably young deer. So yeah, we're pretty stoked to get this one. We sort of scoped this area out. We've done 3 or 4 hunts before we actually got to the rut. So this is that's private property that we're lucky enough to have access to, and it backs onto state forest. So we've scoped it out. And I've obviously hunted there previously, but this year being so dry, the deer, they're in a sort of completely different area to I've seen them previously. So, yeah, we sort of figured out that they come to this one sort of area most nights, and then there's a bit of a spring there, which I think is where they get their water. So, and then after that, usually just after first light, they disappear up into the bush. We managed to sort of find a little bit of a plateau in between 2 gullies. So if you imagine 2 gullies coming down in a V shape, heading up towards the bush, and there's a bit of a plateau in between them. So we snuck up through the farmer's paddock into the, I guess you call it the left gully, and there was a nice log there that we could sort of sit and watch where we noticed these deer seem to be heading into the bush every morning. So yeah, we got there well before first light, set up, got behind this little log. You know, the paddock's very, very dry, or was very dry that time of year. It wasn't a blade of grass. There's no real cover for us or the deer in the paddock. So yeah, this log was really our only option before they disappeared up into the bush. So yeah, we sat there probably, maybe 10 minutes after first light. We seen the first doe come up out of a gully, so we can't actually see the paddock from this vantage point, but we've got a nice little clear area where they walk across every morning. So yeah, we've seen this first doe come up. I said to my young fella, Beauty, we're on here. And then she walked past. Then another couple of does. Probably, there was three small groups, probably totaling 30 deer all up, I guess. And then they stopped. There was no more deer coming out of the paddock and going into the bush. And I said to my young fellow, oh, this is weird. There definitely should be a buck with them this time of year. So we just, we hung 10 and we waited behind this log waiting for something else to come up. And 15 minutes went by, 20 minutes went by, nothing. So then I ended up, I'm a very impatient person. I find it hard to sit still. So I sort of poked my head up from behind this log and got a little bit higher, scoped around with the binos, and I could see, didn't actually know it was a deer at the time, but I could see these, they looked like a sort of a browny yellow colour that shouldn't have been there. And I could just see it. It looked like a couple of sticks, which were the points of his antlers, as it turns out. But they were just above the lip on this other gully that we were trying to look into. So I couldn't actually see the body of the deer or the head of the deer. I could just see the tops of his antlers, and they were really like a yellow-brown sort of contrasting colour that just, struck out. So I sort of got up. I actually stood on the log, got up on my tippy toes, and I could see probably only half of his palm, the top half of his palm. I said to my young fella, there's a deer down there, mate. He's a good one. We've got to wait and hope he comes out. So we sat down and we probably gave it another 10 minutes. Nothing happened. I could just see the tip of his antlers sort of moving side to side as he obviously looked around. I said to my young fella, just give those antlers a bit of a rattle and see if we can actually stir him up and get him to come up. So young fella was sitting behind me. He grabbed the rattling antlers, gave him a good rattle, and the deer stood up for about a second and then sat back down. But he didn't stand all the way up. I think he must have had a big night with his girlfriends. He half stood up and then he thought, you know what, it's not worth it, and then just sat straight back down. There was no sort of clear shot at him. So then we sort of waited a bit longer, no movement. I said, we're going to have to actually sneak down and see if we can get a look at him. So we popped back over into the gully we were in, walked down probably 100 metres down this gully, almost parallel to where he was, and popped out on what I thought would be a nice little saddle so we could see down into the gully he was. We come up there, up behind a little tree, and sort of poked my head up, and the same thing. I could just see the tops of his antlers. That wasn't any better vantage point, really. So then I said to my young fella, righto, we'll try rattling again, see if we can get him to come up. So I stood on the root ball of this tree with my rifle propped against the side of the tree, ready. He rattled the antlers. The deer stood up, but only with its back legs. It obviously didn't even have the energy to get its front legs up. And then I said, well, there's really nothing else we can do. We can try and get closer, but there's absolutely no cover between us and him. It's extremely dry. The leaves were like cornflakes. We couldn't go anywhere. And two of us aren't perhaps the quietest people. We sort of a bit of a loose end what to do to try and get a shot at this buck. And then we rattled a bit more. My young fella even scraped the antlers on the log, which got him to stand up, but he only sort of stood up for a second and sat back down. Didn't have enough time to get a shot. And then we noticed that the farmer's cattle were coming sort of they were coming up the paddock and were very shortly going to be between us and this buck. And by previous experience, the cattle generally don't like the bucks and will chase them off. So I said to my young fella, righto, this is it, mate. We've got to get a shot at him now, or he's going to run straight up that other track and he's going to disappear into the neighbour's paddock that, we won't have another chance to get him. So, yeah, he got the antlers. He rattled the absolute crap out of him. He grabbed him. He dragged him on the logs and he done all sorts of stuff, kicked a heap of dirt. And, the buck stood up for about 3 seconds, which was long enough for me to slip around just behind his shoulder. And because the buck was he was in a gully and there was a bit of a lip of the basin that we were in between us and him, and the bullet would have only had, 3 or 4 inches above the top of this lip of this gully. So obviously as it scooted over there, it's kicked up a heap of dust, and I've thought, oh shit, I've clipped it, it's a bad shot. But the buck, he was standing there and he was just really stiff-legged. He took 1, 2, 3 steps and then he stopped there. I thought, I don't know if I've hit him good or what's happening. It felt good, but the dust, it sort of rattled me, to be honest. So I slipped another one in and, he took 4 or 5 steps and then disappeared out of view behind or down into this gully. So I said to my young fella, right, I know that was a good shot. We'll give him a couple of minutes and we'll run down there. So, we sort of had a bit of a chat about how big we thought he was and if he was a good deer. And, young fella was pretty keen to get down there. So we might have given it a minute. And then, we sort of jogged down there. He was probably only, 180, maybe 200 metres away. Got down there and, the first shot was a perfect heart shot. There was, there was quite a bit of blood. He hadn't gone very far at all. So, he was piled up there. Turns out that he had a little scrape there just on the edge of the farmer's paddock. He was a beautiful buck, as you've probably seen by the photo.
Well done, firstly. I've got a heap of questions for you here. I want to know first, how old's your young fella?
So my young fella is 8 now.
And have you been out hunting with him for a while?
I have, yeah. I first took him, I think he was only 4. He didn't really know what, obviously, hunting was then. He just wanted to come with Dad and be around Dad. So I took the rifle, but the first couple of hunts I didn't even take a round. I just sort of take him out and see if he enjoyed being out in the bush and that. And it turns out he loved it. So I sort of progressed from there, and then I figured out a way to hunt safely with him. We come up with quite a few rules that he had to stick to, and when I first seriously took him hunting, I think he was 5, maybe nearly 6, and he would have to be behind me. Obviously, the whole time I had the gun. If I was to take a shot, I had the magazine in my pocket. Obviously, no round in the chamber. He's got his little earmuffs, so I'd have to make sure they were on. Then I'd have to turn around. If I was doing a laying down shot, I'd make him have both his hands on the back of my calves. If it was a standing shot, he had to have both hands on either my bum or my back, just so. Obviously, when you're looking through the scope, everything else can potentially fade away. So I just wanted that assurance that he wasn't anywhere near the bad end of the gun, I suppose. So that's obviously the biggest thing with a kid hunting is safety, and we worked really hard on that.
I absolutely love it. Props to you, because some great ideas there, and it's something that my eldest is getting towards that age where he wants to come out. So I think they're actually really handy, and it was something I'd been thinking about, because you're right. Once you're looking through that scope and you're potentially trying to line up a shot, what's behind you, sort of to the side, not in the peripherals, especially, depending. Some people, I know I most of the time shoot with sort of one eye closed. I know some people have both open, just depends, but you are sort of locked on and not seeing what's going on around you, and you don't want to move too much too. So I actually think some really good ideas there about just holding on and the different positions. So love it. And I think, as you said, safety is the number one priority. I say that all the time, and then I think it even increases when you have a kid around you, especially your own. So, absolutely love that idea, mate. So, how many hunts had you been on with him? Because it sounded like he was a major part of your success in getting this buck here.
Yes, he seems to be my lucky charm, mate. So, if I take him hunting or fishing, I'm usually in with a pretty good show of getting something reasonably decent. So I've taken him on quite a few hunts. If I had to put a number on it, it'd be probably in the 20s for fallow, and probably maybe 20 or 30 for sambar, I suppose. But yeah, he's obviously, when he was younger, he's getting a lot more mature now, but sort of that 5, 6, even 7-year-old sort of stage, he had a relatively short attention span. So all those hunts, when I say 20 hunts or 30 hunts, it's not, you go out for half a day and you really hike to where you think the deer are going to be. It's you find a place that is perhaps not as steep as where you would usually go. Somewhere that you don't have to walk too far from the car. So when he's sick of it, he's sick of it. He wants to be home now. So, it's finding that happy medium where you find a spot that you think there might be deer. They might be small deer, or they might not be exactly what you're after, but they'll be deer, and it keeps him engaged and entertained. So yeah, I've taken him on quite a few hunts, but probably not true hunts until the last year or so, when we've really started getting up over the ridges and in where the deer should be.
Yeah, I appreciate that, because it's something I've been toying with, the idea of how to get him out there and involved. And, we do a fair bit of hiking and whatnot. And I do notice I've got a probably good half an hour to 45 minutes. And then after that, it's getting a bit too much and he's done. And that's walking, I might say. So not sort of sitting there, but I'm guessing, and, after watching my kids grow up, they're very much like me. And I had a bit of a giggle when you said you're an impatient person, and sitting behind a log for a while, you sort of, get a bit antsy, because I'm very much like that. And I know it's the wrong thing to do, and everyone says it to me all the time, and totally agree. I'm not arguing with anybody about that. But it's just something, it's just not me. I really struggle with that. And then I think about my kids and go, oh, they're going to be exactly like me. Probably worse, because they're, very energetic, very loud. And that is the one for me. I keep thinking about hunting, going, how the hell am I going to get these kids quiet? Because we all know noise can be a killer, and mate, they create some damn noise for such small little animals. It reminds me of all those memes that you see about people over in the States that think there's a big buck coming and it ends up being a squirrel. And I just always relate that to my kids, because I'm like, this small little human and they make so much damn noise. They're the squirrel buck analogy for me.
Yeah, no, I've found the exact same thing, but having said that, I've also found that, and I don't know if this is just isolated incidents or if it is actually something that seems to be ringing true, but because he makes so much noise, and it's not he used to make a lot of noise, it's not the traditional noise of, like a footprint. It's sort of scratching and kicking around, and it's all sorts of stuff. The deer didn't seem to be as phased as I thought they would by it, which is strange, I know, but I guess just because it's not that traditional human footprint, maybe it doesn't worry him as much.
Yeah, it's a funny one when it comes to noise. Some places they can be so spooky, others don't really care as much, and different animals will obviously, with their past experience, will maybe leg it and get out of there. Others will sort of be very curious and whatnot. And you've probably found that a little bit with Sambar because they're a lot more curious than sort of the fallow are. And you were talking about how you hunt both there. With this buck, is this like the biggest buck you've got previously, or is this like where does it sit on the scale? And it's probably, I'm guessing, the most important because it was with the young fella.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. It probably is just the biggest. So I've got another one that he was a very old deer. He also had he was a very small bodied deer. So the rack on him when he was standing looked huge, but it's probably only about the same size as this one. Which it's quite a nice rack, probably the best one I've seen on the particular area that I usually frequent. And yeah, usually the local bucks here seem to be very weak on their left side. They always seem to have split palms, but this fella here is quite even.
Have you put that down to genetics or feed, or what do you think that is for?
I think it would have to be genetics. So I've got a couple there that are quite nice on one side, but the other side is, like I said, it's split. It's quite average. But if you look at the two or three side by side, they are, they're probably brothers or siblings or something like that.
Yeah, okay. Hey mate, you chase Sambar as well. You mentioned that a bit earlier. I've got the Sambar / snow camp, which is coming up, and I know the area that we're going down to. There has been an absolute heap of snow dumped again, and I had a bit of a joke in the group that we'd set up. I called it the no snow camp because I didn't want what happened last time, but I don't think we're going to be that lucky somehow. Who knows? Fingers crossed. It's still a little bit of time. But how do you find chasing them different to fallow?
I believe they're a hell of a lot smarter than fallow. The bigger ones especially, but fallow, they seem to feed a lot more in the paddocks. So if you have got a semi-open paddock with a bit of cover, the fallow are usually easy-ish to spot, whereas the Sambar, I find, you might see them come out, 10, 20 minutes before dark into the clearer country, but, you'll see them for 10 or 15 minutes, then it's too dark to shoot, and then in the mornings, you might get, half an hour to an hour when they're just on that fringe country before they feed in up into the bush. So they are a lot, I believe, just a lot sort of more wary. They don't like to expose themselves anywhere near as much as fallow.
Well, I think it's that stealthiness, and I guess they're so alluring to chase for me because everybody talks about how hard they are to get and that they're just so much more switched on. And it's probably growing up around, been hunted by tigers and the like. So it's one of those things. I am just frothing at the bit to get down there and go for a hunt. But I sit there and go, we're going down for Sambar, but there's fallow in the area. If I see a deer, I will probably pull the trigger either way because the freezer's looking a little bit empty at the moment. So I'll need to get that on one. Mate, did you eat the buck? Because I always see this conjecture about bucks and you can't eat them in a rut and whatnot. And I know I was lucky enough to harvest a buck this year. Was under spotlight, but still got him in that rut period, and he stunk, obviously. But I was lucky enough, had the lift and lock, was able to rip it up in a tree, gut it, and be super, super cautious. Switched out the blades and skinned him completely, so nothing tainted the meat. And flavour-wise, no issue whatsoever. He is an older animal, so it was a bit tough, but other than that, the actual flavour was pretty damn good. Do you find the same sort of thing? Did you eat him? Did you not worry about it? How do you go with that?
Well, this particular one, I did eat the back straps, but the legs went to the dogs. Most of the rest of the meat sort of got minced up and went to the dogs as well. He tasted pretty good, but I think it was probably 3 years ago. I got a reasonable buck. As you say, you've got to be very cautious that when you skin them, you don't let that that knife that you skin them with touch any of the meat, because it just seems to taint it straight away. But actually, I cut him open, and just the horrible smell of buck. It was, you could smell it as soon as I cut him open. It was rank. So it's sort of throwing me off him a little bit. But I don't really like to shoot an animal and not utilize it. So I'm still giving it a crack. But yeah, that certainly threw me off quite a bit.
It's funny, isn't it? It's like you talk to different people, and look, it doesn't bother me in what anyone does, right? Like for me, I am more wanting to make sure I get as much meat as possible. But if people leave the meat, that's it's their choice at the end of the day. But it's just fascinating to hear different perspectives and people's different experiences, and because everybody has such a different sort of journey and a pathway, and then when they harvest their animals, and just even different experiences with that, with the meat quality and how they go about it and the whole process. It's always something that fascinates me, and I love to hear it, because I think that's one of the things I love about the podcast the most, talking to just a multitude of people and hearing so many different ways to do things. I don't sometimes think that there's right and wrong. I think there's just different ways.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And obviously I hunt probably not as much private property as I do state forest, but I do hunt quite a bit of private. And I've actually got one property where the farmer is very adamant that he's happy to let me on, but he's also pushing pretty hard for the deer numbers to be thinned out. So if I want to go there and hunt a buck, for example, it almost feels like I need to go out there and shoot 6 or 7 does just to try and thin the numbers for him.
Yeah.
And 6 or 7 does, I'm not going to say I give the meat away, because we're obviously not allowed to do that here in Victoria, but the meat certainly doesn't go to waste. But yeah, it's a lot different to if you set out to a state forest that's a couple of hours away. You don't have that, I guess, opportunity of shooting 6 or 7 deer in a day and being too spoilt for meat.
Yeah, and look, I get that too, because there's a damn lot of work that goes into the butchering side of it. And I reflect on that and go, it is such a tricky one and so time consuming. And I know Northwest Outfitters up there, Kraken property, they're doing sort of meat hunts at the moment where it's pretty good value. Well, I think anyway, $1,500, I think it was off the top of my head. You can harvest 5 does, plus you get to stay in the house, and you got a guide and a buggy. And I think it's 3 days, 2 nights, something like that. Don't quote me, check them out. That I sit there and go, man, over 2 days, you're going to be hard pressed to be able to harvest all that meat out of those 5 animals. Because it's not something that happens just real quickly, and then the period of when the deer are out and about compared to when they're not. It's not the same as hunting in a state forest, where if you get a couple of animals, mate, you've done an absolute cracking job. But the reality isn't that you'll do that. Like, there's plenty of times people go to state forest and don't see anything, and we see that all over the social media pages consistently. I get why sometimes it sort of becomes that there's just you're harvesting too much, and you're not going to be able to utilize the meat. Like, we can all say, hey, we wish we do it all the time, but there's going to be circumstances where that doesn't allow for that. And it's not, I don't think it's a judgment thing. I hope people don't think that I'm judging people or telling people that they must take all the meat, because again, each their own, and different circumstances need different ways to go about things as well. So it's seven does, mate. There's a lot of work in that to harvest them all up. It's more time consuming, and people don't get that. People, I talk to a lot of people who are not hunters, and they definitely think that the hard part's pulling the trigger, and it's like, no, that's the start of it. That's not depending if it's in a state forest and deer are hard to come by. Yes, it's hard to get that shot, but once you pull the trigger, it's over very quickly, and then the hard work really does start.
Yes, that's exactly right, mate. Yep.
So, mate, have you taken a sambar?
Yes, I have taken a few Samba, yeah.
Oh, nice. How different is it harvesting the Samba versus the fallow?
In my opinion, it is miles better. Just they're such a bigger animal. You get bigger cuts. You get a lot more meat for a single animal. And I personally prefer the flavour of Samba a bit more.
Oh, the flavour. I was presenting to SSAA, and I think that was one of the questions that was thrown at me. And man, I do not taste it. I was saying on there, I've had Chiddle, I've had Red, I've had Rusa, I've had Samba, and I've had Fallow. And I honestly, if you put them all, you cook them the same way as I always cook them, and put them all in front of me, I am really not going to be able to say that's that one or the other. So I keep saying maybe it's just my palate, but do you really have a big difference in the flavour?
I wouldn't say it's a huge difference. No, it's just I don't even know how to describe it. It's just slightly different flavour. Yeah, and I guess it comes down to your palate, which one you which one you prefer more. But yeah, for me, it's definitely the Samba.
So, mate, what is next? Is it, the young fella, obviously being only 8, he's a few years away from being able to get his juniors permit. Is that something that's the end goal, is to have him out there and get him one as soon as possible? Is it, trying to knock over some different species? What's the next plans?
Well, he's very keen for us to go out and hunt some reds. So I've got to work towards that in the next year, and hopefully for next year's Raw we can go out and see if we can knock over a nice red stag. But I mean, I don't think there's any escaping of as soon as he can get his juniors, he's keen. He's going to go out and be up the bush every chance he gets, I think.
Yeah, there's one thing. Look, I am envious of you blokes down there, because just having some cracking public land and not having the booking system, just being able to, whether you just go, oh, I'm bored, I've got the Arvo free, I'm going out. Unfortunately, we can't do that here in New South Wales. So that's something I am very envious of. So I think it's just more conducive for people to be able to get out there whenever and be more flexible. And I know we were talking about this as a parent, trying to tee up the recording. There's been a hell of a lot going on, even to the point I was like, yep, we're ready to go, mates. And you said, I need 5 to 10 because of the kids. And then by the time you jumped on, I was changing nappy. And you do have to be so flexible with kids. It's just such a completely extra element that you've got to deal with.
It is, mate. It is, and we're very lucky because we are so close to state forest. If we get a free arvo, we can pretty much just jump in the car and 10 minutes we're somewhere where there should, in theory, be Samba cruising around, which makes it very easy to get him involved.
Yeah, it's one of those ones. I think it's just such a great model, and I wish New South Wales would sort of look at a similar way. I'm not against our state forest system. I quite like it. I think there's small changes that would be nice, including the fact that you could just book if there's that afternoon if there's still spots. Like I don't understand why we have the delay. I'm not sure about that, and especially if people are cancelling a hunt. Like if someone goes out, they book for 7 days, and they cancel it that morning. Why couldn't someone else get in there that afternoon? Like that to me seems wasted opportunities. But I mean, look, you sort of can't complain too much, because I think the fact that we have got public land access compared to Queenslanders is a big prop too.
It is, absolutely it is.
So, mate, you've got to be happy with this year's rut. Fantastic thing. Where are we in the process of your trophy?
So, as you touched on before, life with kids is extremely busy. I've touched base a couple of times with Brad and almost made the journey with the cape and the head up there, but I nearly got there one afternoon, and then something popped up. My lovely wife had to work, so I didn't get there. I've just got to make a time and make it work and get it up there.
Look, it's just life, isn't it? Life just gets in the way of everything. It's just so busy consistently, and kids just add that extra element. And I wouldn't change a thing, because they're just the best. But you sort of sometimes think you have the best laid plans or you have things set up and just, you're out of it. So it's always good fun. Mate, how'd you get into hunting?
Funny story, mate. So we've sort of had the family farm in northeast Victoria here for, well, obviously before I was a kid. My parents had it. And sort of from about when I was 14 or 15 onwards, the sambar started appearing. And funnily enough, I never really had any interest in chasing them. Done a bit of fox, rabbit sort of hunting and shooting when I was younger and that. But I guess when my young fella, just before he was born, actually, I come up here and started finding a few cast antlers in the paddock, and found myself with a bit of spare time, bit of time off when he was young. So I brought him up here and just cruised around and found these antlers and sort of thought, you know what, I wouldn't mind actually chasing these critters up around the hills. And believe me, it's very poor timing starting your hunting career when you've got a 1-year-old. But yeah, that's basically what drew me into it, was these beautiful cast antlers laying around that I'd find.
Yeah, I think it fascinates me how people get into it. Because my journey I feel is quite unique. I didn't even know we had deer here for such a long time, and just enjoyed the shooting element, and then it sort of transitioned, and then I sort of flowed from, that I just love hiking and camping and full driving and all that in one is what hunting sort of is. And I love that it's just all of the elements that I love and have done since, God, is before I could walk with the family. So look, I'm sambar are just, they're such a beautiful animal. But what do you think do you prefer in like your antlers? Do you like the shape of fallow compared to sambar? What gets you a bit more excited?
The fallow rut. I absolutely love the fallow rut. Yeah, I wouldn't miss it now after hunting the first one. But just the fallow antlers, they're so unique. Like, you never see two sets that are identical.
Yeah.
Whereas sambar, they've all sort of got the same 3 points. They might be wider, longer brows, different sort of tops, but they're all the same 3 points, which are still amazing, and I still love looking at them. But yeah, they're not as unique as the fallow.
Yeah, it's fallow do. I think fallow is always going to be the one I absolutely adore chasing, because the rut is such a great experience, and I love the croaking. It's I've played. I must look like an idiot sometimes, but obviously work in a school, and I was in the office one day, and all the ladies were asking me, what noise does a deer make? So I was playing the croaking, because I just obviously have a game caller on my phone, and so I was playing through that, and it's just such a unique, unreal sound. And I think you're right. The fallow deer antlers, just the paddles, and there's such difference in all of them. They look bloody awesome. So I completely understand where you're coming from there. That's for sure.
And yeah, like you say, the croaking and that of the rut is such a fully immersive experience. Like, you've got the sights, the sounds. If you get close enough, you've got that lovely smell that they leave everywhere. It's just,
I don't know about lovely.
Yeah.
Just
unique.
Unique is just, right.
Yeah, it's just such a immersive experience. It's amazing. Similar to the sambar hunting, like it's a lot more of a game of trying to outsmart them, because they're so tricky that you can be walking along and you can have that feeling that you're being watched, and all of a sudden you'll turn around and there's a sambar that you've just walked past. He's been standing in his little thicket of wattle or dogwood or whatever he is the whole time watching you. And as soon as you turn your head, he knows that you've seen him, and he'll just take off.
How'd you learn? I'm fascinated now with how people actually learn to hunt, because it wasn't something I've always asked, but now I'm starting to wonder, because so many people have so many different ways, and especially after I had to chat with Nick, I think it was Nick, yes, traveling backwoodsman. I'm sure it's Nick as well, and him using AI and things like that. Now I'm just like, how are people learning? And I think I pay more focus to it.
Yeah, I remember listening to that episode about the AI and thinking it's something I definitely should look into. I'm sort of a bit on the fence with AI, but I don't think there's any dodging it anymore. It's
here.
Yeah, it's going to be
it's
here to stay.
It's here to stay, and it's definitely not going anywhere. And it's a crazy one, and it's late at night, obviously, and it is Nick. I double checked there because I was like, I'm sure it's Nick, but it's throwing me because I'm talking to you and you're Nick too, and I'm like, oh, I need sleep.
How did I learn? Well, I didn't really have any mates or anything that were into hunting, so I kind of just bought a rifle, a really cheap rifle, which I wouldn't recommend doing because I ended up obviously having to buy a better one. Poor man always pays twice.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I thought I wouldn't mind hunting these animals, so didn't really want to get too involved just in case it wasn't something that I really loved. So yeah, bought a cheap rifle, and pretty much every chance I get, I would just head up the bush, and for the first 12 months, I would manage to see quite a few deer, but that was generally only after they'd seen me and they were running in the opposite direction.
Yeah, okay.
So that took a little bit to learn to slow down, sort of glass a lot more, because I believe they can see through the scrub, whereas as humans we kind of focus on what's right in front of us. We'll focus on the bush instead of what's past it. So yeah, just a lot of hunting, and then with the fallow rut, quite a bit of just watching, like your YouTube videos, sort of seeing how everyone else approached it. But yeah, basically, mate, just by getting out there and learning my own lessons very slowly, and lots of missed opportunities at the start, which you learn from everyone, I guess.
Yeah, I love that. That's I sort of keep reflecting, and I don't think I'd change a thing. I love getting out there and just making those mistakes and learning from them. And I think there's just something about it compared to, like, I watch YouTube and got the basics and things from that. But I think it's actually getting out there on your own and doing the hard yards and making the mistakes, and then it's just that to me so rewarding. And it's probably, I keep saying I probably wouldn't do a hunting course personally. The only one I think I would do would be Errol Mason's, and it's on the back that I just enjoy making those mistakes, and then even just thinking about it, what would I have done differently? And it just gives you so much more, I don't know, it just keeps me so much more enticed, and just can't wait to get out to the next time and rectify the wrongs, sort of thing, compared to any other way. I feel anyway, that's how I sort of approach it. And, it is one thing that I can't wait to get back out there and approach it a different way, and remember what happened, all the things that went wrong, and fix them. And I feel that's part of the journey, and then you feel like that personal growth as well. And, I thoroughly enjoy that part.
Yeah, I definitely agree. So much more like a sense of achievement, bigger sense of achievement if you learn all those lessons yourself. And yeah, like you say, you replay all the things that you could have done better for next time, and then when it comes to the hunt, you lay in your swag awake until 3 o'clock in the morning, and then fall asleep, and you wake up exhausted. And yeah, it's great. I love it.
Well, I'm glad it's not just me, because I always talk about one of the things it probably frustrates me the most out of anything is the night before a hunt. I know I've got this really long drive and I want to get up and I want a good night's rest, and it never happens. It doesn't matter. I can do the same thing as I always do, like most weeknights and whatnot. And I just lay there just thinking about it, and just in anticipation and excitement. And I love that feeling, but then I also pay for it because I'm bloody tired when I get there. And then, as you said, each night, and then the worst part for me is if we do croak camp or we go chasing fallow, and you're staying in the forest or anywhere near where there will be deer, I just lay there hoping to hear croaking, and like I'm silent, just listening for it. I don't go to sleep because I'm too busy wanting to hear that croak.
And then as soon as you do hear that croak, it's just, like a light's been flicked on and you're just wide awake listening to it, wondering if he's going to be there in the morning. And I can definitely relate.
Oh, it's like a drug, isn't it? I sometimes feel that hunting is definitely like this addiction that it just plays on your mind consistently, and it's when you're immersed in it, it's just amazing. And when you're not there, you're thinking about it and talking about it, and I wouldn't trade that. Probably the benefit of having a podcast is I get to talk about hunting so much. So when I'm not out there, and I'm not going to be out there every weekend because it's just not close for me, and with the kids and whatnot. So I love the fact that I can talk about it, and that I don't know if that makes it more exciting when I've got a hunt coming up, because I get to talk about it, and I've been just talking about hunting so much that it just sort of amps it up even more. I wonder sometimes, and you sound like you hunt a fair bit. I wonder sometimes if you're doing it every week, does it start to not the novelty, but the anticipation start to wear off a little bit for the week to week hunt?
I certainly haven't found it does. With the young fella, obviously I don't do quite as in depth the hunts, so you don't feel that real buzz of I'm gonna get right up in the tops and I'm gonna see those big stags, but I still get that excitement, like, maybe I'll see, something awesome with the young fella and he'll get the opportunity to see it as well. It's always a buzz, just a different sort of buzz with kids, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've had that this year, is that the kids are all making deer noises and practicing, and it's bloody so cute. But I sort of sit there and it's just added an extra element into it. And, I've said it before on the podcast, I must look like a bit of a stalker because we go up to the local deer farms and we listen to the croaking and the kids get super excited. And, it's one of those things that they're just memories that I just love. And, I can't wait for the day I can get them out there and we're out in the bush actually hunting and they're getting to hear that. And I think that will be so cool.
That is amazing, mate. I still remember the first little buck that Riley, my young fella, actually rattled in. So we were up in State Forest, sort of not too far from some private where the fella usually feed, and he had these rattling antlers, and we're rattling, and then it started to get a little bit darker, and he lost interest. He goes, I want to go home now, Dad. I said, yeah, righto, mate. No worries. We've given it a good crack. And then he just happened to turn his head, and there was the smallest buck I think I've ever seen. His antlers would have been maybe 6 inches long. Oh, Dad, there's a buck. I called in a buck. And this poor little thing was just standing there. It had no idea what was going on. And he grabbed his earmuffs and he tried to put them on, and I helped him put them on, and then I don't have the magazine in the gun when I'm with him, so I had to put the magazine in, get him behind me, make sure he was holding onto my legs, cycle around in. Meanwhile, this has probably taken 30 seconds, and this poor buck is still standing there. Anyway, dropped the buck, and he was just so excited. He had to ring Mum and tell her, and then he had to ring his grandparents and tell them, and the whole walk back to the car, he was just glowing. And I think that, he was just excited for the next, 2 to 3 weeks. Telling everyone, a lot of people probably didn't really want to hear it, but he was telling anyone that'd listen.
Well, I mean, that sounds like an absolutely fantastic memory. And I think that's a really good way to wrap it up, because what a cool story. He seems, mate, I might have to get some tips from him on how to rattle them in, because he seems like he's becoming a bit of a pro, which is great to hear. And But mate, I do appreciate you coming on, sharing the story. It's awesome. It's awesome the fact that Murphy's Taxidermy, Brad there, donated it. It's awesome. You had such a cool story with your young fella, and now it's going to be, sort of now it's going to be that you're going to have the mount, you're going to have that there to always make it just that much more special. So I appreciate you coming on. Well done again on winning the prize, and mate, yes, I can't. Hopefully, we'll have a few more, and who knows, maybe the next one in a couple of years' time, your young fella will be the one writing the story and maybe winning as well.
Yeah, no, here's hoping, Matt. Thank you so much for having me. Young fella's already told me that there's no way the deer's going anywhere but in his room. It's his deer. He called it in. I had very little to do with it, apparently. So, it will be awesome. So thank you very much.
Well, mate, hard to argue with him. I think it definitely should go in his room, and what a memory. So well done again, and thank you for coming on. And guys, I hope you enjoyed that one. I know I have, and bye for now. You've been listening to the Australian Hunting and Beyond podcast with Matt. Thanks for tuning in, and can't wait to catch you next time. But in the meantime, if you want more, you can find it at linktr.ee/Australian Hunting and Beyond. That will give you our YouTube, Instagram, X, Facebook, you name it. We'll catch you next time.